What it do, baby?
Alright, welcome everyone to the ATB podcast, All Things Basketball. We're your hosts, Kelvin,
Gary.
and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the NBA awards.
Yes, sir.
So,
All right, let's get it started with the MVP. Who you got?
all right, so I got my man Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, he was MVP last year, and he's putting up even better stats this year. I mean, just from the eye test on the stats, like he is averaging a near 30 point 14 rebound, 6 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block
Ooh,
per game. And he's doing this on like 31 minutes a game. Like that
that's
is
crazy.
insane. And like his one weakness last year was his three-pointer. And he was shooting 26% last year, which doesn't even keep the defense honest. I mean, he
Nope,
was like Ben Simmons last year. Like
nope. Except shooting
and I
them.
mean
That's what
and
Ben Simmons would have shot if he were to actually take threes. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And what this allowed teams to do was just to sag off of them and
Mm,
double everyone else,
yeah.
and just force them to try to drive into the paint where he would meet like four
Yep.
defenders who would just line up in front of him, and they would just force someone else to try to beat them. So, but this year he is shooting almost 31% from three. And
Yep.
even like from earlier in the year, he was shooting almost 34%.
Yeah.
Like it fell off later in the year, but like
Mm,
at the beginning of the year, he was taking, like from what I saw, almost five threes a game
yep.
and shooting almost 33, 34%.
Yep.
And like I know he didn't keep it up, but he's still almost 5% higher than he was last
Yeah.
year, which is crazy for like how well he's developing.
And when you talk about last year when they played the Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, the issue was you had Ibaka, Marc Gasol, Kawhi. You had all these really, really long defenders. So towards the end of Milwaukee took game 1 and 2, but after that, pretty much, you'd have Kawhi or Siakam guarding him on the perimeter, and then when he would drive, there would just be three bodies there, and it was,
Hmm.
it was knocking off his passes. He wasn't able to hit, Brogdon and
Yeah.
Middleton. It kind of got in his head. But yeah, last year he was only taking 2.8 threes per game. This year he's shooting 4.8, so two more attempts this year than last year, and he's shooting it at a better percentage.
Yeah.
And if there is going to be playoffs this year, of course we're not sure right now, but if there were to be playoffs, you know, in a 5, 6, 4, 5, 6 game, 7 game series, he could catch fire and shoot, at that 34, 35% clip, which would, that's just
Hmm.
unstoppable because now you got to worry about that. And then he can start incorporating the pump fake,
Hmm.
jab steps,
Like what
his,
can't he
you
do?
got to guard him. Yeah. You got to
What
guard him
can't he
from half
do?
court. Yeah.
And
He's the
like,
difference
and
maker.
don't
He just,
forget, he
if he
is
starts making the
arguably
threes.
the best two-way player in the league. The best.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he in my opinion is the front runner to win Defensive Player of the Year as well. And
I
that's
agree. I
crazy
agree.
that he's what, like the fourth like best scorer in the league, like points wise,
Yeah.
and he's like arguably a top two, top three defender in the league, like hands down. Like
Yep.
that, like, and you combine all that together, and
Best record in the
you got
league.
one of the most unstoppable players in NBA history.
Best record in the league. And, I was looking at some of the stats. This is a crazy stat. The only two players averaging more than 20 points with under 31 minutes per game are Giannis and Chris Middleton.
And they're
29
both on
players
the Bucks.
average 29 players average over 20 points per game. And the only two who average that under 31 minutes, everybody else plays more than that, are Giannis and Chris Middleton, who believe, are on the same team. So that just speaks to how
Yeah,
dominant they are. Not only is he averaging these numbers, but he's averaging them. You got Harden and LeBron playing
and I
35 to
mean they're
38
they're
minutes a night.
they're getting
They're
wins. They're
blowing out.
getting a
Yeah.
lot of wins,
What is it? 11
and it
losses on
isn't
the
just.
season? It's crazy. 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, I mean they were set like. And I know they had a few bad losses, and I know Giannis like he took like a couple of games off, and that cost them. But
Yeah.
they were on pace for like what 72 games
Yep.
like wins,
They could still
but
get to
they can still get to around 70, I
yeah.
believe, and I
Right.
think they will.
Yeah, I
Like
do too.
if the regular
Right
season
now
continues,
they're
that is.
53 and 12. So they would have to go 17-0 to get the 70 wins. So 70 is probably not, what they're going to get because, at the end of the season once they lock up the number 1 seed, they can rest their players, but 65 wins is definitely doable for them. And
Hmm.
that's truly dominant. They've got the number 1 seed locked up if the season were to continue. So
Yeah.
I think he's a unanimous MVP, regardless of LeBron what he's doing at 35 and Harden. Um,
Hmm.
I think Harden's overrated just only because of the system that he's in. I think he's a great player, but
Yeah.
if you put a
I,
lot of people in that system would not thrive as well as he is because he's great at manipulating defenders and getting foul calls. But I think a
yeah.
lot of players would average 25 to 30 in that system.
Mhm. I don't want to say Harden's overrated because I don't think he is. In my opinion, he's one of the best, if not the best, isolation scorers of all time.
Yep.
But in my opinion, just because in the system he's in, he gets more attempts than the other
Hmm.
players, which is why his points per game is so high. And also, I want to talk about LeBron here. Like, he is doing something incredible for like what is 35,
Yeah.
like he turned 35
Yep.
a while back. He's putting up the same numbers he was when he was 23, 24.
Even more
Like
assists,
that is
most assists of his
crazy.
career,
Yeah.
double-digit assists, leading the league. It's crazy. They only
Hmm.
have 14 losses, and he's 35. If it were any other season, I'd
Yeah,
probably give
he
the
win
MVP to
MVP for
him.
sure.
Yeah, for sure. But Giannis he's just on another level. I think he's got the dominance of Shaq when it comes to the paint. Not quite, obviously, but
Hmm.
he's definitely up there. And then he's developing a perimeter game, and he's got the passing, he's got the defense. He can. The thing with him is that he can play, the three, but he can be your center if you need him to be. He can guard centers,
Yeah,
so
he can play 1 through 5. Like he can defend one
he
through
can
five,
guard
and
one
he
through
can
five. Yeah,
play 1 through 5. Yeah. I mean
he's just an
that's the
animal.
crazy thing.
Yeah,
He is like the definition of a positionless player.
for sure.
And
And
I
yeah,
just
he's a beast.
I like I and that's LeBron is my front runner. But I just want to say like no one like this season can rival like Giannis's impact on the game. Like
Mhm.
he's the most valuable player on the best team. Like that is just
That's the
a
definition of
recipe for the
MVP. Yep,
MVP. Yeah.
yep, for sure.
All
And
right. So
while we're on
moving
that, yeah,
on.
yep. Why don't we talk about defensive player of the year since I think we both have or I know I have Giannis for that too, so I can just add on to kind of what I was saying.
Hmm. Yeah.
Who do you have for defensive player of the year?
I actually okay. This was a close one for me. I had Anthony Davis for a while.
Mm,
But then, like, the more I looked into it, the more I realized, like, Giannis is just like what he's doing this year is just absolutely incredible. Like,
it's crazy.
I like Anthony Davis. He is playing great, and the Lakers, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league. But it's just like Giannis is just he's impacting the game in so many ways on defense, and he's a great rim protector. He can defend out on the perimeter. Like he can defend the 1 through 5, and just looking at some of the stats, I mean, he's got a 96 defensive rating per 100, which is elite, and he's got a 4.8 defensive win share, which is really good. Like, and for reference, Anthony Davis is at a 4.1.
Mm,
So I just don't think like I feel like Giannis might not win it just because he's gonna win MVP, but like I think
yeah.
just from like a actual performance standpoint, like Giannis is the definite defensive player of the year.
Yeah, and to go off of that, so pretty much what the Bucks, what they like to do, and they did this last year too, and it really helped. They don't, so it's a 3-point league now in today's NBA. If you don't shoot the three ball well, then you're not gonna you're not gonna have success
Yeah.
as a team. So but the Bucks, what they do, is they pack the paint, and they don't care necessarily as much as the 3-point shot, but they care more about um, layups and dunks and things like that. That's why they have Giannis and Brook Lopez, who's
Hmm.
averaging almost 2 blocks a game. To give
Yeah.
him credit, he definitely anchors the defense along with Giannis. To talk about more about that and just how good they've been defensively, they allowed the fifth least points per game at about 107.4 points per game. They allowed the least points per game in the paint, just 38.8 points per game. Next is Toronto with 42. They have the lowest field goal percentage allowed, which is 41.3%. Next is the Raptors, and they lead the league in team blocks at 390. The next is the Magic at 372. So when you
Wow.
talk about the paint, they lead in percentage, um, team blocks, and they allow the least points per game in the paint. So they dominate the painted area. So you can't
Hmm.
beat them because even if you're lights out from three, that's just not getting you enough because you're just not able to score in the paint against them with
Yeah.
Giannis and Brook Lopez. And
And
the
the
thing
thing
with
is,
Giannis is he's
they're
the
so
effort.
versatile too.
Yeah,
Like,
they got a lot. They can switch. They
like
can
they
all
focus
switch.
a lot on the 3 pointer as well. The main thing is that they're giving up a lot of mid ranges, but like nowadays, like it's fine with that because it's analytically like better to
Mm,
give up a mid range than a 3 pointer or a layup.
yeah,
So like Giannis is playing like he's the best player on the best team with the best defense as probably their best defender. Like that just he's just unrivaled
it's
in the
yeah,
MVP and the defensive player
it's
of the year
crazy.
this year.
And another thing, so PER, not to sound like Max Kellerman, but it's not a perfect science, but it's pretty much it sums up all the players' positive accomplishments and it subtracts their negative accomplishments and it returns with a permanent rating of a player's performance. He has the highest PER in the league at 31.6. The next
Yeah.
closest is Anthony Davis, I believe, with 28.3, which shows just not only is he doing all of this, but he's doing it extremely efficiently on both ends of the floor. And also
Hmm.
with Giannis, not even to go into statistics, when you watch him play, his effort is absolutely it's ridiculous. You can tell he wants it badly. He thinks of every game as a playoff
Yeah.
game or like it's it could be his last game. He goes out there and he definitely has the Mamba mentality. He's not working out with players on other teams in the summer. Um,
Hmm.
he's never smiling out there. He's a very serious on the court, and it definitely helps him. He's
Yeah. It
just
definitely
he's a beast.
translates to the game.
Yep.
Also, like the crazy thing is he's improving every year. He has not stopped improving. Like I think a lot of people might have thought like last year was probably his peak. That he might never be a consistent 3 point shooter, but this year he's proving all the haters wrong. And I mean, like he was averaging almost 28 points last season, and he somehow even managed to up that to almost 30 points. And like who knows like where he'll be next season. Like he might be averaging 35 shooting like 35% from three. Like it's just crazy how well he's developing, and he's only what 25,
Yeah,
26.
he could definitely go down as the greatest player of all time. I think
Yeah.
if he just develops and continues to develop the jump shot,
Hmm.
it's over. It already is over for the league, but if he can just kind of finish polishing that off, then you know you don't really have a
Yeah, for
chance. You can
sure.
just give him the championship.
Hmm. All right, so our next topic is the six men of the year. So who you got?
Yeah, he's 25. Just to clarify, he's only 25. All right.
Oh, okay.
So six man
That's
of the year.
crazy.
Yeah, this one was kind of a tough one. This has probably been what I can remember, probably the most stacked six man of the year like competition that there has been in a while. The last few years, Lou Williams has
Yeah.
kind of run away with it. But there
Hmm.
are a ton of really good bench players this year. Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder, Goran Dragic, Lou Williams. Just to name a few, Tyler Hero. I wouldn't put him in the conversation for six man of the year, but there's just a lot of really good players coming off the bench. And I went with Dennis Schroeder. Who do you go with?
I actually I got Montrezl Harrell.
All right, interesting, interesting. All right, why did you go with Montrez?
All right, so first of all, like it's crazy how the Clippers they have two of the best bench scorers in the league, and the reason I went with Montrez is that he I don't think a lot of people know that he's averaging 19 points, and like he is like he's a dog, man. Like he's
He
everywhere
is
on the court.
definitely that. He is definitely a dog.
Yeah, I mean he's got that Patrick Beverly mentality. I mean he shares that he's got the grittiness, the
Yeah,
hustle, and like on top of that, the Clippers is a very good team. When I know they didn't quite figure it out at the beginning of the year,
they've definitely
but
picked it up though.
yeah, like ever since everyone's been healthy, they've been unstoppable. I mean, like no one can beat them. And on
For
top of
sure.
that, like I would give it to Lou Will this year. It's just like he's just not quite as good this year as he was last year. And since he's basically a non-factor on defense, I just can't give it to him this year because he's just a step down from where he was last year.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
however, Montrez I mean, he stepped up his game. Like last season, he was averaging 17. This 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 season, he's averaging 19, and like I mean, he's a definite plus on offense and defense. So it was a very hard decision for me to make. And also, I love Dennis Schroeder, of course. He's doing something incredible in OKC along with the rest of the guys, Shea Gilgeous Alexander, CP3. But I just think like Montrez is just he's he's the best bench scorer in the league right now, just in my opinion.
Yeah. So Montrezl Harrell, he's been a beast this year. What he reminds me of, uh, he reminds me of Zach Randolph and Kenneth Fareed, but he doesn't really have a jump shot. He reminds me of Zach Randolph in the sense that he's a beast on the boards and he's very physical. And then he reminds me of Kenneth Fareed. Just he's a when he goes out there, he's just energetic. He
Oh
never
yeah, he's a
seems
little
to
bit
get
like Ben
tired. He's
Wallace.
yeah,
He
he's
reminds me a little bit of Ben
yeah, like an
Wallace, but
undersized
he's
center
better
who's
offensively.
dominant on. Well, Ben Wallace wasn't dominant on offense, but he's a smaller center who's just extremely energetic and doesn't
Hmm.
care like how big you are or anything like that. He's gonna crash the boards. He's gonna get his paint shots, and he's gonna defend well. I mean, he's just yeah, he reminds me of all three of those guys. Kenneth Freed back
Hmm.
in Denver, not current day, but he's not in the league. But in
Yeah.
Denver, Kenneth Freed was he's always jumping, diving for loose balls, getting rebounds. That's what Montrez reminds me of because he's not the most talented player, but he makes up for his
Hmm.
talent with his effort. Not to say
Yeah.
that he's not talented, but I'd say
I
obviously
mean,
Dennis
every
Schroeder and
team
Lou
could use a
Williams are
player like
definitely more
Montrez.
polished than he is. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So I went with Dennis Schroeder. He's averaging 19 points per game, 4 assists. He's shooting 38% from three, almost 48% from the field. The reasons why I went with him are the reasons why. Okay, so the reasons why I didn't go with Montrez or Lou Williams is as much they are for sure. They're definitely obviously a championship contender with Kawhi and Paul George and Reggie Jackson
Yeah.
and all
I mean, they
really
got a
everyone.
crazy
Yeah,
amount of
they had
depth.
got 9, 10 guys that could be starting on another team. So,
Yeah.
but the only reason I did not go with Montrez or Lou Williams is if you were to take Lou Williams off the Clippers or if you were to take Montrez off the Clippers, they would still, in my opinion, be contenders because you still have Kawhi, you still have Paul George, you still have one or the other. The reason I went with Dennis Schroeder is, in my opinion, he's more important to his team because
Mm.
if you were to take Dennis Schroeder off the Thunder, they really have nothing on their bench. They have Nerlens Noel, who's, he's your prototypical backup center. He'll give you rebounds, defense, and he can finish. But
Catch
besides
lobs.
that, yeah, there's really not. Their bench is kind of non-existent. Mike Muscala, Terrence Ferguson. It's not very deep at all. So to me, without him, their depth would almost be invisible. But if you were to take Montrez or Lou Williams off of the Clippers, they would still have a lot of depth and they would still be able to contend. But without his 19 points per game, they don't win a lot of games because the Thunder, they've been known for their comebacks and they've been in a ton of close games this season. And he's a big reason why him, Shea, and Chris Paul
CP3.
are
Yeah.
they're those that little three guard,
They're a definite
that
surprise
trio.
this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
another
think most
thing.
people thought that like when
I
West
didn't think they
started.
were making the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think most people did. I think people thought that they were replacing Westbrook, who was a former MVP, with like CP3, who most people thought was regressing.
He's
I mean,
definitely
I mean,
he
he
showed
gets
up
most
this
people
year.
thought he was a injury prone point guard who at his best is like he's
He's
a
average. Yeah,
prototypical. Yeah, yeah, like
at this
people
stage
didn't
in
really
his
consider
career.
him an all-star. Yeah.
Yeah. He's
And
he's one of the best. That just shows his leadership. He's one of the best leaders in the NBA because
mhm.
you think you had Russell Westbrook and Paul George, and you replaced them with Gallinari, um, Shea, and Chris
Shea,
Paul, and the fact that they
yeah.
have the same record that they did through 65, 67
I
games.
actually think it's even like a little bit better even.
Yeah, that's crazy because you look at the other team and you're like, that's two MVP candidates on the same team, and you guys couldn't get out of the first round. And
Yeah.
you only won a game in the first round. If I took that Thunder team against this Thunder team this year, the way that they're playing and the way that they've been led by Chris Paul, I mean, that's probably like, a 6, 7 game series. Like if you were to put those two teams against each other, the team from last year and the team from this year, even though the team from last year on paper is much better.
Yeah. I mean, Billy Donovan's doing a heck of a job this year coaching them. I mean, I think they the main thing is that they got the correct mindset. Like
for
you
sure.
see them with like all kinds of comebacks throughout the year, and I think it's just like they got that winning mindset. They're out there to win, and they never lose faith in themselves. And I think that's the main thing, especially because they got a bunch of young players who are rookies, sophomores, and I think with along with CP3's leadership, like this mindset just drives them to win and finish out games. Yeah, for time's sake, we gotta move on
Yep.
to the next topic, which is the most improved player, which I actually think was
That's
the
a
one
deep
I
topic.
struggle with the
Yep.
most. All right, and my candidate is Bam Adebayo, and and here's why. So he went from being, I don't think most people thought like he could develop into like arguably a top five, maybe even top three center in the league so
Nope.
quickly.
Nope.
And like he went from averaging 9 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, which like is a normal,
It's a
like
bank.
a
It's a
decent,
backup. Yeah, it's a backup.
yeah, a decent like backup center,
Yeah.
to averaging 16, 11, and 5. And like that just like he is a defensive anchor. Like first of all,
Definitely.
he's got that Ben Wallace kind of impact for me. Well, he doesn't have the same impact. It's just like he reminds me a
Size and
lot of him.
stature. Yeah, he
Yeah.
definitely is. He plays like him in a sense, but on offense, he's just very, very gifted, especially
hmm
passing 5 assists per game. You know,
Yeah, as a center,
yeah, that's
he's
very
probably the
impressive.
second best passing center in the league, only behind
I agree.
Jokic, in my
Yep.
opinion.
When I
And
look at him, man, he reminds me of he kind of reminds me of Pau Gasol, not as dominant on offense in the post. And if he could develop a mid range jumper, then I think he would remind me a lot of Pau. But Pau was always a center, or even Mark Gasol, either Gasol brother, just
mhm,
without the range, because they both very good defensively, um, can anchor a team on defense and on offense are good rebounders, but they can pass the ball and they can handle the ball too, and that's
for
what Bam
sure,
can
yeah,
do. So if he can develop a mid range shot, I think he could be as good as Powell or Marc Gasol were in their prime.
yeah. And I think another thing is that like he's a big part of why the Heat is so good this season. And it's definitely not just because of Jimmy Butler. Like as great as Jimmy Butler is as an individual player, like everyone on the Heat is stepping up this season.
Yeah,
So
everyone on that team. Yep,
yeah. So I think just like the main factor for me for why Bam Adebayo should win this award over like people like Jason Tatum or Brandon Ingram is that it's just his team is winning a lot. And like it's just a big improvement from last year. And I feel like he's contributing a lot. I mean, he's got a 4.6 offensive win share, 3.6 defensive win share, and an 8.1 win share overall. And I just feel like his impact has just risen so much from last season.
for sure. So for my most improved player, just to name off a few candidates before I go, you got Brandon Ingram, Bam Adebayo. Um, there are just a ton of players. I'm kind of going blank here for a minute, but there are a lot of players. Jason Tatum,
Yeah, I mean
uh,
Jason Tatum, a Pascal Siakam,
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. There are a lot of players.
Devontae Graham.
Yep,
I mean, there's a
there are a
lot of good
lot of
players
players
this
this
year.
year. So usually it's kind of most improved player. I think some people think of it as kind of like a bad player becoming a good player, kind of like a Devontae Graham. Not that he was bad last year, but didn't really make much of an impact at all. But I think what some people forget is like it can also be like Bam, like a good player becoming an even better player. Or in my case, I have a good player who's become a star, and that's my most improved player is Jason Tatum. Um, I think he's a superstar in the making. He's top 5 in the East, I think, player wise.
hmm
He went from 16 points last year to 24, 6 rebounds to 7, 2 assists to 3 assists. He's shooting the three ball at 40%. And he was taking 13 shots per game last year. Now he's taking 19 shots per game. So without Kyrie, not only has he been able to grow in every statistical category, but now he's having to take 6 more shots. He is the number one option of that team. He's the leading scorer. So to go from a number two option who was mainly kind of just a spot up guy and got to run his offense when Kyrie was on the bench, now the offense runs through him and he's the guy that they go to down the stretch. They're 43 and 21. They're the third seed in the East. He has 14 games of 30 or more points. Last year he had one in 79 games played. This year he has 14 in 59 games played. Some standout games that I thought he had this season were his 39 points against the Clippers in overtime, which they won, and he had a 41-point game against the Lakers, which they lost, but obviously not because of him. He can completely take over a game with his range. He's very, very, very clutch. He has, the step back over Paul George. He has the game winner against the Knicks, the game tying shot against the Clippers in overtime. Um, he's he's a player that you can build around to win a championship, and yeah, I think the Sixers and the Lakers definitely regret not taking him because I think next year he's just going to get even better.
Yeah, for
And
sure. He's
he,
definitely improved a lot as a player.
yep,
And I don't think it's just like I think it's more than just he's taking more shots and getting more points. I think it's way more than that because most people, if they're like he was averaging 16 points per game last season,
mm,
and now he's averaging almost
24.
24. And like taking more shots, yes, it'll give you more points. It's just the fact that he's doing it on even arguably like better
Yep,
efficiency
yep,
is the main factor for me. Like that's why he's a superstar. Like he can score so much and still be very efficient. Like that just and then, like I think you can just tell he's such a skilled player. He can attack from everywhere, and I don't think people talk about this enough. His defense is like arguably
very good,
like
very good.
yeah, he can definitely make a all NBA defensive team.
Yeah, in the future for sure. Maybe even this year. But when just on both ends of the floor, he's definitely starting to dominate. He had like 7 games in a row of over 30 points, I think, last month or in the month of February. He was
Yeah,
on an absolute tear, and I feel like people haven't been giving him credit since the beginning of the year. But he's definitely starting to get the credit now that he deserves. He's definitely, in my opinion, a future MVP and an NBA champion as well.
for sure. All right, so next thing we got coach of the year. So
Ooh, this one's
so
a,
for
this is
me,
a
I
tough one.
have for me like I would say it's close, but for me, it's just there's no other coach in the league that I've seen that just tries so many different ways that um to combat the other team's strategies that actually works. Like and that coach for me is Nick Nurse. So last year, I think most people first of all, most people didn't expect the Raptors to be very good last year. Or they expected them to be good, but
They
like
expected him
not
to
good
be
enough
a
to beat
second round
the
team,
Warriors.
a second round
Yeah,
team. Yeah,
but they won the
maybe
championship,
the
and
conference finals
I mean, like people can say that it's just because they got Kawhi, maybe Marc Gasol, but I think the main factor was Nick Nurse. I don't think most people like understand what he was doing last year, and definitely like this year. So, like when we were talking about Giannis, right? Nick Nurse was the one who put in a system where like they completely shut down Giannis in the playoffs.
for sure.
They put a line of bodies in front of him every time he drive. Then he had to work for all of his baskets, unlike in the regular season where he was just taller, stronger, and more athletic than most of the guys on the floor. And like especially this year is where he like Nick Nurse's creativity really shows.
Yeah.
So like for example, like when the Raptors, I don't quite remember when it was, but the Raptors were going up against the Mavericks, and they were
Oh
down
yeah,
by
that
I
was in.
think
I remember
30.
that was in
So
December. We had a 30 point lead, and yeah, that was a yeah. Anyway, continue.
yeah, and Nick Nurse, like he was trying all kinds of different strategies. I mean, like he started full court pressing. I think like in another game or maybe in the same game, he even tried a box and one, which is
Yeah,
like no one's
you don't
tried
see
that
that a
before.
lot
You
today.
just
Yep.
yeah, and I just want to say they have the same like they're on pace for the same record or even better record
Yep.
than the previous year, and they don't have Kawhi, and half
Mm-mm.
their
Nope.
team is injured,
They are
like
always
half
injured.
the
Marc
year.
Gasol is,
Ha,
always
yeah.
injured.
So like half their team is injured, and Nick Nurse is able to turn around the season and make like a team that I don't think most people consider like a playoff team into a team that like people think can actually make the conference finals.
Yeah, I think most people probably thought of them as a first round team, but the powerhouses of the East were going to be Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly. I definitely nobody thought that they would be a 2 seed for sure.
Mm,
They're on pace to do something great. And when you talk about injuries, they have been one of the most injury prone teams. Serge Ibaka, I can't think of a player that hasn't missed more than like 15 games. Kyle Lowry earlier in the season, Pascal Siakam around Christmas, Marc Gasol pretty much all season. He's probably only played 20 games.
yeah,
Ibaka's missed about 10, 15 games. Norman Powell's been out several times. Fred Van Vliet was out until the stoppage because of the coronavirus. All of their main pieces have been hurt, and not to mention a good amount of their players were undrafted, and they're putting up great numbers. Chris Boucher, Terrence Davis, Fred Van Vliet. Those are three rotational guys for them. They were all undrafted, and Nick Nurse has built them into really, really good players. So
yeah. I mean, they're
he's a
elite
great
on the
coach.
offensive end and the defensive end, and I think that's like a lot of credit has to go to Nick Nurse. I mean,
Yeah,
they basically have the same team as in like 2016, 2017, except that instead of
Siakam instead
having
of DeMar
DeMar,
to be their All Star.
yeah,
Yeah,
they have. I mean, they even had Siakam during that time.
yeah,
It's just like
he was. Yeah,
after firing Dwayne Casey, the team has just gotten so good because of, in my opinion, first of all, like I think Nick Nurse is just better at utilizing his players, and he's making he's turning players that wouldn't otherwise be known as like maybe like really good defensive players into like a really good defensive unit, and as well as on offense, they're a really good offensive unit.
definitely.
All right, so for time's sake, again, we have to move on.
Well,
So
I gotta get mine first. I gotta get mine.
all right, all right, all
All
right.
right. All right. So for when you were talking about Nick Nurse and all the injuries that the Raptors have had, I probably picked the coach who's probably had the second most injuries. Not for sure, but so I went with Nate McMillan of the Indiana Pacers. Probably not on a lot of people's radars for coach of
Oh,
the year.
wow,
Probably
I
you're
didn't even think
thinking,
of him.
yeah, you're thinking Mike Budenholzer, Frank Vogel, Nick Nurse, maybe Doc Rivers, maybe Brad Stevens, someone like that. But
Mm.
the reason I went with Nate McMillan, they're 39 and 26. Um, and let me just name off some of the injuries and how many games they missed. Victor Oladipo, their all-star player, has missed 52 games. He's only played 13 games this season. Jeremy Lamb has missed 19 games. Malcolm Brogdon has missed 17 games. And Miles Turner has missed 10 games. Those are four of their six best players with Sabonis and TJ Warren that have all missed double-digit games. Oladipo missing 52. Who is their best player when healthy? So the way that I look at it, the fact that they're still able to stay afloat as a playoff team, he continues to develop a different guy every year. It was Oladipo 2 years ago. Now it's Sabonis who's the all-star. He's continued to get Miles Turner to feel more comfortable shooting jumpers. TJ Warren's became a 20-point per game scorer who now shoots the three ball efficiently. He's put together a team with great post play. They have two really good post players with Turner and Sabonis, with a bunch of really, really, really efficient 3-point shooters. Brogdon, Jeremy Lamb, Doug McDermott, Justin Holiday, they can all shoot the three ball over 40%. And then you have a star who you can run the pick and roll with, who he can hit a shot from anywhere on the court, and he's clutch with Victor Oladipo. So for me, just the fact that he's been able to keep them as a playoff team in the East with all the injuries to really some of their best players, I think a lot of credit has to go to him because not a lot of people thought that their depth was all that, but they've had to rely on it a lot, and they've all shown up to play. So that's why Nick McMillan is my coach of the year.
For sure. All right, so for rookie of the year, I have. I don't think like there's a question about this, but my rookie of the year is Ja Morant, and like I just think like aside from Nick Nurse, he probably like turned around an NBA team like the most this season. I mean, I think the most people thought even with Ja Morant that the Grizzlies were gonna be like at least a lottery team. Like I
Definitely.
don't think anyone would expect them to be the eighth seed. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not, and like they're way ahead, like as the eighth seed. Like they're like their records, they're at like what 500. They're
Yeah,
right.
just
Are
about
they right
500.
under what?
Yep.
Just about 500. Okay. So they're at just about 500, and their team isn't that much different than last season. And like last season they were awful.
They were very bad. Yeah, you're replacing pretty much Conley and Gasol, who are two very decent players when healthy, with John Morant.
Hmm.
They're 32
and
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 33, one game under 500.
all right. So like he has such a natural feel to the game. He's a really good playmaker, and I feel like I feel like he's what most people thought what Westbrook was going to be. Just because like not saying Westbrook is a great player, and I think like in the past few years he's like polished his game a lot. And but I think like just at such an early age, like John Moran really reminds me a lot of Derrick Rose and Westbrook, but like
Yeah.
he's really composed. He
Yep,
knows
he's
what he's
very mature.
doing
That's
out
what I was
there.
gonna say. I think
Yeah,
that's the difference between
he
them.
plays like a veteran,
Yep.
and he's a rookie, and I'd assume he's a good leader because he's leading a group of guys who most people probably never heard of
Yeah, and they're a very young team
to
too, so it's not
yeah
easy.
to the playoffs, and that's what I think is most impressive is that he's playing like a veteran, yet he's only what nine like no he's probably like 20, 21.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what like makes him my rookie of the year. He's just the most valuable rookie to his team.
As good as John Morant has been, a lot of people have John Morant, but I've gone with the other rookie who everybody's got their eye on, and that's Zion Williamson. He's my rookie of the year, and a lot of people are going to say, he can't be rookie of the year. He's only played 19 games. But the reason why I have him as rookie of the year, his stat 23 and a half points per game, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting 58% from the field and 45% from three. Keep in mind he's shooting less than a three per game. So to me, that doesn't really matter all that much. But almost 60% from the field, 23 and a half points and 7 rebounds in just 19 games. The reason why I have him as my rookie of the year is when I look at rookie of the year, you look at, of course, numbers, you look at impact for the team, maybe a little bit of a surprise factor, compared to what they were supposed to be. The reason I have Zion as my rookie of the year is because he's had so much expectation on his shoulders. Is he the next
Mhm.
LeBron? Is he the next Charles Barkley? Is he the next, NBA great? He's shown up and played extremely well in 19 games. He hasn't had a bad game. And another thing, he's hardly polished as a player. Still putting up these numbers. He's overweight. Um, they're still working on a shot for him. It's flat right now. His free throw percentage is not good. It's hovering around 60%. Um, I wouldn't say his jump shot's definitely not there yet. Um, and his post moves are not defined. He doesn't have a go to move.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
and I just like to point out he struggles finishing with his right hand. Like
Yep.
if you watch him play, he almost always goes to the left.
Yep.
And also he is a rebounding machine.
He
Like
is. Yeah. He should. I think he
if
should
you
be
seen
averaging
him
more.
play,
But
like even from the eye test, he is an incredible rebounder. Just like his he has such a good vertical, and he gets off the floor so quickly. And I think just by the eye test, he is one of the like I want to say one of the best rebounders in the league right now. Like at
yeah,
such an early age, and
I
he's
read.
undersized too.
Yeah, I saw something. I think it was Jalen Rose who said it. He averages more offensive rebounds per game than defensive rebounds per game. That to me, that's
Yeah.
crazy. His second jump reminds me of Carmelo Anthony in Denver, to where
Mm.
he can miss a shot and just immediately he's going back up to get it. His second jump, I think, is the best ever. It will be the best ever because he misses, he's immediately getting it again. He takes, the ball away from people like it's taking candy from a baby. He's a dominant player and he's not polished. If he once he polishes his things, he could easily be, he could be the best player in the league if he can stay healthy. Because to me, he's only scoring off of effort and sheer want to score. Just stealing the ball from people, dunking and running the floor. If he polishes his game, not only is it's going to be easier on his body because he's not going to have to work so hard for every bucket because he's going to have the skills to where maybe it'll take a little pressure off of him, but he's going to be averaging even better, numbers than he is right now, and he's already averaging pretty good numbers. So that's
Yeah.
why that's why I have him as my rookie of the year.
All right. Just as a FYI, the only reason I wouldn't have Zion Williamson is that he just hasn't played enough games.
Yep.
I don't see the NBA giving like the award to Zion because like 19 games is just not enough. Maybe
It's a small
maybe
sample
if he
size.
played the rest of the season, I feel like he would be the rookie
Yeah,
of the year for
that's a
sure.
big if as well because who knows how many games there are going to be left in the season, if any. So if they come back and they were to finish the 82 game season, then he's probably at like 35 to 40 games played. Maybe that helps his chances. I could see a co rookie of the year being given out just because of how well he's performed. I think the last time they did that was with Jason Kidd and Grant Hill in '96. So I don't
Oh
think they
really?
would do that,
I never
but
even heard of that.
yeah, Grant Hill and Jason Kidd won it. So I don't think they would do a co rookie of the year, but I think that definitely Jaw deserves it because of his impact and his efficiency with the amount of games he's played. But I think Zion deserves it because of his sheer dominance and efficiency.
Yeah,
So there's
for
definitely
sure.
a debate for both of them.
Well, all right, guys. We're gonna have to end it off here, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a comment down below on your thoughts on the predictions for this year's NBA awards, and please feel free to give us some suggestions on what you guys want us to talk about.